Hi folks, so if you are gone on Thursday, here is our plan. We are doing our first day of Poetry Slam preparation and we are focused on this learning target by the time we are all the way done with our slamming. I can write and perform a true about me poem that I am proud of using figurative language and sound devices so that I can perform it in our Poetry Slam. So again, our plan for Thursday is to address the questions, what is a poetry slam and what makes a slam poem good? So we will spend some time watching this video. I'll put a link to the video in Google Classroom, and it's going to address what is a poetry slam competition. Poetry Slam you'll see started as a competitive thing. We are actually not doing a competition. Instead, we're going to focus on the performance part of the Poetry Slam. So not competing, but performing it. Simply put, Poetry Slam is the competitive art of performance poetry. It puts a dual emphasis on writing and performance, encouraging poets to focus on what they're saying and how they're saying it. So knowing that Poetry Slam is a combination of performance and poetry, there are two ways that you guys will be graded. One will be on your performance and one will be on the poetry. So within the performance, we're going to be looking at your pace, how fast and slow you go during your performance, your voice tone and volume, any gestures that you make during the performance, making eye contact with your audience when appropriate, and your overall stage presence and enthusiasm. For the poem side of your Poetry Slam, the poem that you make should have some kind of personal meaning, and you get to decide how personal do you want to be. The two things that we'll keep coming back to throughout our Poetry Slam preparations are, one, be real. Make sure that it is true about you, it is some real stuff. And two, show some courage. Go back to those thoughts that we learned about during the courage retreat and see about how can you bring that same courage to our Poetry Slam between this week and next week. So after we've talked about those pieces, our next thing that we'll do is we'll actually look at a few different Poetry Slam examples. So again, I'll put the links to these in Google Classroom. I want you to watch all three of the performances and look at these things again. What's their pace? What's their voice tone and volume? What gestures do they have? Did they make good eye contact? And what was their overall stage presence and enthusiasm? So you can watch Maxwell Street, you can watch Blank Page, and you can watch Siri, a Coping Mechanism. Then, once you've had a chance to watch those, we are going to actually spend some time writing a slam poem. So we've talked about those performance skills, but remember that Poetry Slam is your performance plus poetry. It's those two things combined. So what you want to write for your slam is, again, some kind of a poem that should have a personal meaning to you. It should be real. It should focus on something from your life, and it should be something that you are proud to perform in front of this audience of your classmates. You get to decide, though, how personal do you want to make it. I want you to take care to craft a poem that you're comfortable sharing with your classmates. So for some kids, they're going to write about basketball. I've had other kids that they go really personal, and one of my boys, for example, he spent a lot of time practicing his poem for slam away from his friends, and when he got up to actually perform the poem for the Poetry Slam, it suddenly became obvious why he wasn't practicing it with his friends. It was a poem that talked about how he really needs to kind of figure out who he is, and sometimes when he's with his friends, he's not the best version of himself. And that was a really hard truth for him to admit. And he wrote about that in his Poetry Slam performance, and he actually performed that in front of a lot of those friends in the classroom. That was a deeply personal, moving poem that he wrote, and he chose to go that deep. Again, other kids are like, nah, I'm going to write a poem about my dog, or I'm going to write a poem about basketball, or I'm going to write a poem about my diabetes that everybody knows about. Whatever you decide to write your poem on, it should be written in a poem format, so in lines and stanzas, and you need to have a legible copy. So typing can be a really good idea. It's not required, but if your handwriting is crazy tough to read, you will want a legible copy of the poem when we get to our Poetry Slam performance. So the poem itself is due by no later than Monday. Ideally, we'd like to have it written before you head into the weekend, which means you've got today and tomorrow to work on it, Thursday and Friday. Some topic ideas from the past: I've had kids write about their family, kids write about their friends, kids who write about someone who's really important to you. They might write a poem about that relationship and what it means. You might write about a place that's important to you. You might write about your hobbies and why they're important in your life. Or I've had some kids that address challenges in their life, whether it is health issues, moving from one house to another, the loss of somebody or something that they love, might be friendships that split, it might be divorce or death. Again, you get to decide what you'd like to write about. All I ask is that you be real and pick a topic that shows a little bit of courage. So this, it's kind of tough to see with this in the way. Let me move it out of the way. How long should your poem be and what style should it be? I tell my kids it should be longer than 2 haikus, and actually not a haiku, a concrete, or an acrostic poem. You want a deeper format than that. So for example, I've got a haiku and a concrete and an acrostic here. And if you look at these, yes, these poems are all true about me, but are they important? Do they really matter? Am I passionate about these poems? Am I proud of these poems? Not especially. Not especially. So those aren't a great match for slam. Then I would like you to take a moment, watch this video, 5 Steps to Writing a Slam Poem. Again, I'll put the link in Google Classroom. And the gist of the video is over on the left-hand side. The 5 steps to writing a really good slam poem are to 1, write it all down. 2, read it out loud, make sure it sounds good. 3, cut the fat. Go back and get rid of words like and, then, because, kind of those extra words that you really don't need. 4, read it out loud again once you've done that revision. And 5, add some flavor. Make it yours. Finally, we're going to wrap up class on Thursday by writing a poem that might push you a little bit to show some being real and to show some courage. This poem is on being powerful and being vulnerable. So it has 3 steps to it. Step 1, you generate a list of ideas of how you are your most powerful self. So I've got my list there when I'm a language arts teacher, when I'm a reading power teacher, as a mama I feel powerful, as a daughter with my dad I feel powerful, and as a best friend I feel powerful. Step 2 is to write about the vulnerable you, where you feel a little less certain. So sometimes as an advanced teacher, I feel a little bit vulnerable because I haven't done it all 17 years of my career, so I'm still learning how to become better at that. As a mama, there are days that I feel pretty vulnerable. I don't feel like I'm always my best self. As a daughter with my mom, who left our home when my parents got divorced, my relationship with her isn't as solid as it is with my dad, so I feel a little bit more vulnerable in that relationship. As a sister to my one brother, I feel more vulnerable again because I don't feel like I was always a great sister to him, and he wasn't always a great brother to me. And as a friend, my introvert self often wants to just tunnel in and not go see people, so that tends to make me feel a little bit more vulnerable. So then step 3 is to actually write a poem in which one of the identities from the first list contends or talks with an identity from your second list. So your powerful self talks to your vulnerable self, which could be a really heavy exercise emotionally, but as the NAPO people say, I hope you will find the results enlightening. Remember that as you're writing that poem, you're going to write it in lines and stanzas, not sentences. You want to have enjambment and end stop and include some sound devices and figurative language. And again, I've got those 5 steps for writing a poetry slam poem, just in case this one becomes your slam poem. I've got my example here, and I will share these slides in Google Classroom, so if you want to read an example, I've got one there. Otherwise, again, you'll want to go back and catch those videos if you haven't had a chance yet to watch what is all in Google Classroom. You'll want to do that so that we can answer those questions. What's a poetry slam and what makes a slam poem good? Have fun on the fan bus.